I'm here today with Tiffany Gaskell, who is the co-CEO of Performance Consultants. She's spent 20 years working with the C-suite at Fortune 500 to SMEs on performance coaching and culture transformation, and she's a regular presenter and keynote speaker. Her background is in investment banking, having previously worked at Credit Suisse in New York and London, and she's the co-author of the 6th edition of Coaching for Performance, the seminal book by Sir John Whitmore, which was first published in 1992. So first of all, welcome, Tiffany. It's really, really good to have you here. It's quite the CV, isn't it?
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I think it's a bit of a sort of a round the garden sort of approach to what I'm doing now, having started off in investment banking.
Yeah, and great background for it. And I'd love to know, I mean, before you were the co-editor of Coaching for Performance, presumably at some point you discovered it as a reader. Tell me about
Yes.
the history of your relationship with the book.
Yes. So, if we turn the clock back, so in 2000, the year 2000, I was sitting on the trading floor and I was one of 5 women on a trading floor of 200 men. And I was at, I had it was a really, I had a great career. I loved it. The thing was that what I was starting to realize was that it was someone else's version of success.
Mm.
And what I needed to do was go and find my version of success. And that's when I discovered coaching. I saw the first time I saw coaching in action. I have to tell you because it was one of those light bulb moments, and so I saw 2 people. It was a demonstration, and I saw the person being coached. She arrived. She had all the worries of the world on her shoulders. And as she was coached during a 15-minute conversation, she put down each of those worries. And at the end of it, she was standing there in her full potential. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I want to learn how to do
This
that.
is
And I want,
magic.
yes, really. It's the work of angels is what sort of popped into my mind. And I wanted to
Work
learn
of angels. That's marvelous.
to do that for individuals, but whole organizations, because I was a business person, so it's whole organizations. So
And
then,
so when did you discover
yeah,
the book?
yeah, exactly. So then I was lucky enough to come across Sir John Whitmore and David Brown, and John was at a point in his career where he wanted to really take the world global, and that's where we co-founded Performance Consultants International, which was the new iteration of Performance Consultants, which he had founded in 1982. I mean, he was way ahead, way ahead. And
It really was. I mean, this is where it all started, isn't it? It's astonishing. He's the
yeah,
sort of godfather of coaching.
exactly. And that's the thing, that he was the first person to call coaching. Coaching been happening in sports, but sports coaching was all about telling people what to do, instructing, as opposed to looking for potential. And so all forms of
And of
coaching
course,
that
he
we see in
developed
the
the
world,
GROW model as well.
exactly the GROW model, which was first published in Coaching for Performance, and that in the 1992 version, which is the most used coaching model in the world today.
Absolutely.
So
And it's what I was
yeah,
trained in when I trained as a coach. Yeah, absolutely.
standing on the shoulders of giants is what we say, really, and
So,
him having written the book, and yeah, so that's how I came across.
and what was that invitation like to be involved as a co-editor? 'Cause this was the 5th edition, wasn't it, that you were first
Yes,
involved in?
yes. The 5th edition, it was a total surprise because what happened was that the 5th edition was planned, and John was involved, and then something changed so that his health wasn't so good. So I stepped in to help, and so that's really how that happened. And of course, because I'd been working with him for over a decade, um, I always say that it takes a while to get to understand exactly where someone's coming from. But all that time working with him, I really felt that I understood kind of what the direction he wanted to take it in.
And the experience of solo editing after his death must have been
Mm.
bittersweet. I mean,
Mm,
the book continues, and that's really powerful, but he's no longer
yes.
here.
Yes, yes, I know. It's one of those sort of strange things, um, like seeing an actor on screen, who's no longer here.
Yes.
Um, but the thing is that the amazing thing is that John's personality and his essence is still very much in the book. And so when I'm working on the book, it's like having a conversation with him. You know, it's sort of, it's just as it always was in a way, because there are his words, and he wrote so well. He used to write a newspaper column, and so he had a fantastic turn of phrase and a fantastic way of getting things across.
Journalism is such a good training ground, isn't it, for writing an engaging book? But it's so
Mhm.
interesting what you say as well, that in a sense, he is still with us, just as an actor is because we see the film still on screen. He and other authors leave their brains in their books, so that we can still continue to sort of meet their minds. And it's a real legacy piece, isn't it?
Yeah, legacy, that was the word that was coming to mind as you were saying that. And that's what we're doing really. We're continuing John's legacy, and so proud to do it. And it feels so I was with the team last week in London, and it feels so on purpose for us as well. So, it's a group of like-minded people who've come together to fulfill his vision, of transforming the global workplace.
Wow, hairs on the back of the neck moment. That coaching was a very, as you say, um, underused or little understood word in a business context when
Mm,
John began this work. It's now arguably perhaps an overused word, or a word that's become devalued because it's used so much. Just talk me through the sort of trajectory. Just quickly in a couple of minutes, talk me through the last 40 years of coaching, and how where it's come from, where it's been, where it's going.
yeah.
That's not a
So
huge question.
I love that question. I love a challenge. um, so, coaching. I mean, obviously, him being a visionary. When I was on the trading floor, knew nothing about coaching. Actually, it was the first time, just before I was leaving the trading floor, that someone called me and told me about coaching. So, in terms of awareness in business, it was right down there at sort of the
Yeah.
turn of the century, if you like. Then we move on, and as you say, now complete explosion of coaching, and I think that's really in response to um, well, it was growing anyway, but it was always in a nice to have bucket. And what are we talking about here? We're talking about people fulfilling their potential. We're talking about platforms becoming organizations becoming the platforms through which people, find that purpose and that potential. And with COVID, it really changed everything, because suddenly organizations were found wanting, where was the meaning and purpose, that, I'm looking for every day when I get up in the one life that I've got. Suddenly there was a stark sort of light shed on this. So, yes, I think that now there's an absolute explosion of coaching. And the thing that we're standing for is the professionalization of it, but also the democratization. So, it being throughout the whole organization. And that's where we're working with clients like Johnson& Johnson and Medtronic, Volvo, for example, all over the world, to help get these skills into the hands of leaders, transformational leaders, who then will lead a culture that enables, or the fulfillment of potential.
It's so interesting as well hearing you speak about the democratization as well as the professionalization. I mean, there's so much to go into here because it is an unregulated industry, effectively, isn't it? So the democratization, the professionalization, but also the recognition of how of the role that it performs in people's lives. Because I think in the past it had been seen as almost remedial, hadn't it? And then there was almost a change, and it became seen as something only for high potential people.
Yes, yeah, it's one extreme to another, isn't it? And yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And back when I was in banking, it was if it was brought into the bank, it was probably a remedial thing. But things of understanding of human potential and understanding of what people in the workplace want now. It's the multi generations that are pushing organizations really to create cultures that they can thrive in, and that's what the book is in service of. Both from a coach point of view, but also from the leader coach point of view.
And I love the point you make about the synergy, that actually the organization's ambitions, goals, purposes are fulfilled when the individual's goals and purposes are met, and that there is no conflict there. Actually, that these two things work perfectly together, because I think that still
Exactly.
isn't fully understood.
Yes, it's a win-win. So it's a win for the people, just to absolutely drive that point home. It's a win for the people in the organization because, all of a sudden they can be themselves. They can uh, show up in a way that is humanizing the workplace, and then for the organization, so there's a win on so many fronts there. And then for the organization, of course, they get that there's that engagement and that extra sort of flair of creativity and innovation that feeds through. So
The discretionary effort that is so often missing.
that's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm reminded of that wonderful thing about, what if we, I think it was originally train, but it stands with coaching as well. What if we coach our people and they leave? Or what if we don't coach them and they stay?
Exactly. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's I think that is the thing that organizations are grappling with. They are grappling with this new world of um of how to approach their relationship with their people. And that's
Yeah.
one of the things we reflect in the book. So we've got a new take on Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. So we're saying that there's a secondary emergence of secondary needs, and that's all around meaning and purpose, and that higher aspirations that people have.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. So that's so interesting, and that feels very much sort of, they talk about Gen Z and that kind of the different contract that people have these days when they go their expectations of a career. What else is reflected in this new edition that's changed over the last, what,
Mm.
how many years since the previous edition?
Yes,
6 or 7 years?
2017.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, well, I think that because of the shifts from the pandemic, it's going deeper and further, and so it is giving more. So with the 2017 edit, we were really turning it into a how-to book. So it's like there's masses of activities in there about how to do things. With the sixth edition, it's really post pandemic, looking at the world today, thinking about how can we use our collective human ingenuity to rise to the challenges that we face as humanity. And these are really big questions,
Those are
and
really big questions.
yes, and really exciting ones as well, because I've got this crazy belief myself, which I've always had, which is anything is possible. And so yes, it's if we can get this knowledge into the hands of as many people as possible, then that will be doing the service that we dream of.
That's a wonderful vision, and I am fully behind you in it. That's brilliant. I do
Thank
want to
you.
talk to you about writing as well. So, was this, when you worked with John on the fifth edition? Was that the first time that you had worked on a book? And just tell me about what you discovered, and what was different the next time round.
Yes. Well, I've always loved writing. And, like I was saying, it's like having a conversation with him. I think in terms of this latest edition, I don't know. I mean, I'm absolutely positive that lots of other writers have this, but I have that thing at 4 a.m. The sort of the thing where basically I've been working on something and it hasn't quite got to the place where I'm thinking of. And then I'll wake up at 4 a.m. and I'll be like, oh, this is what I need to do. And so I always have a pen and notepad by my bed so that I can write it all down. Sometimes in the morning, sometimes it's a little bit off, and I'm like, what was I thinking? But sometimes it's they're
It seems
gems
so
in
great at 4 a.m.
there. Exactly, it's so funny, isn't it? So sometimes there are gems in there. So yeah, it's one of those things. But it's sort of I heard someone that you were speaking to talking about this, bring what's sort of in your soul into the world through your writing. And I thought it was such a beautiful thing to say. And those 4 a.m. moments, I really cherish them because I just think, all the distractions aren't there. And so, you've sort of got this cocooned space in which, these thoughts, come through. And I feel like it's that sort of thing.
I'm going to ask you a question that occurs to me, particularly because I think 4 in the morning is a great time for self-coaching, generally because you can't ring your coach up at that point in the morning. But what do you think is the relationship between the practice of coaching and the practice of writing? It's a very
Mm.
leading question, but I'm just interested in how you see those
Just,
two things.
just
What are the connections?
just say a little bit more about what you're thinking about it.
So I'm always really interested in when I'm writing, I often find myself asking myself questions, which I think is a coaching discipline, and maybe it's a
Mm.
coaching habit. I don't know, but it's also it's something about finding questions, leaning into that curiosity and noticing what you notice, and that writing for yourself helps with that before you start writing for other people.
Mm.
But there's also something about the quality of the thinking, the protected space, the ability to cut through to what really matters when we spend so much of our lives dealing with what frankly doesn't. So yes, it was a very leading question because that's where I was going with it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying there. The thing that I'm thinking about is that, so with my writing, what I think about is I think, right, where would I love to be at the end of the day? So a bit of grow model, I suppose.
Bit of
Where would I
grow,
love
a
to
bit of your
be?
goal.
Yeah. Um, where am I now?
Where am
What's,
I now?
yeah, what do I want to do? What are my options to get there, kind of thing, and then what will I do? So I set up my sort of intention, how I'd love it to be, and like you say, that protected space. So that sort of creates that protected space, and then yes, I used to kind of try and do everything else at the same time, but you don't have enough headspace, do you? I mean, you need sort of like, because I think it's something about developing one's thoughts and really, going into oneself in a way that, and spending enough time with oneself in order to bring that out. Something like that.
Yes,
Feels
and
like
there's
that.
very little opportunity for that in the world, I think,
Right.
generally,
Yeah.
especially in
Yeah.
business.
Yes. So it's such a
Yeah.
luxury, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, yes. And it doesn't always feel like a luxury. It sometimes feels like a burden, but yes, it is. It's absolutely a luxury. So I always ask my guests for their best tips. So if somebody's listening to this and thinking, I'm really grappling with the whole idea of, writing my book, I'm struggling. What would you tell them?
Mm. Um, so I would say a couple of things. One is that in the book we've got question bags, and there is a self coaching. You talked about self coaching. There is a self coaching at the back, and so I would actually sit down with you know your sort of dream of what you'd love it to be, and then use that to self coach. The other thing I'm thinking about is that there's a little book by Ted Hughes called Poetry in Making. Have you?
I haven't
It's
read it, no.
yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. It's nice and short, but what it is that in it he says, the thing that sticks with me is, if when you're writing, if you're bored, your audience is going to be bored. And so this is where we have to get the essence of ourselves into it. And I think it's very interesting that, because it rings true, you know?
Mm. You are the first advocate for your book. Absolutely. If you're not inspired by this, how on earth do you expect somebody else to be inspired by it? Yeah,
Mm,
which it doesn't always feel the case, but over time, there's
yeah.
got to be something there that comes out. Yeah, you've really got to care about what you're writing about, and that's got to come through in the book, hasn't it?
Mm,
I think it's one of the big differences between writing a business book, which is intended to change how people think and how they act, to writing a piece of academic research, which might be interesting to 4 people on the planet, but is not really going to sort of make a dent in most people's lives. But to do that, you need to connect at the emotional level as well.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
And I
those are
think
great
even
tips.
more so, yeah, even more so for business books, because otherwise, it's sort of dry, isn't it? And yeah,
And
so
we've all
getting
read
that
those
emotion.
books, or we've all failed to finish those books. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
always
would.
ask my guests for a recommendation as well. And the Ted Hughes one is fabulous. I'm going to dig that out. But are there any other books that you would recommend? I mean, obviously, Coaching for Performance, but other books that people, perhaps that you've read that have inspired you?
Yes, I mean, the business writer who's absolutely incredible from my perspective is Michael Lewis. So obviously, I used to be in banking. So he wrote The Big Short, Liar's Poker. He basically was, when I was in derivatives trading, I couldn't explain, to other people outside of it what was going on. And Michael Lewis made it accessible to all grandmothers. I mean, he's just fantastic. So fantastic storyteller. And of course, The Big Short got made into a book. And the seminal moment there is when Margot Robbie is sitting in a bubble bath explaining what a derivative is. And I'm like, yes, unbelievable.
That's hilarious. And he was a journalist as well, wasn't he? There's
Yeah.
that
Yes. Yeah. He
storytelling
was
impulse.
a banker and he was a journalist. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, love that. Brilliant. And I don't have to my shame, I haven't read any Michael Lewis. I will go and do that. Maybe because I'm terrified that I won't understand what a derivative is, but maybe that's why I need to go and read him. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Tiffany, if people want to find out more about you, more about your business, more about your book, where should they go?
So connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you, Tiffany Gaskell. Also, Coaching Performance is available in all good bookshops. And then, of course, performanceconsultants.com to check out the work that we're doing around the world with multinationals.
Brilliant. I will put those links up on the show notes at extraordinarybusinessbooks.com. Such a pleasure to talk to you today about coaching and writing. I mean, what could be better? Absolutely marvelous. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.